Hi there, everybody. I'm Peyton Smith, your social media producer over here at Paizo. Thank you guys so much for coming back with us here today for the final countdown of Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Gen Con is almost here with us, and I have an absolutely lovely gentleman here with me today. So, Jason.
When does he get here?
Nice to meet you, man.
Yeah,
My
good,
name's
good.
Peyton.
Yeah,
Nice
hey
to
there,
meet you.
Peyton. Yeah, no, it's the first time we've ever met.
Yeah, absolutely. Just hold the magic, Jason.
Hi there, everybody. I'm Jason Bulmahn. I'm the director of game design at Paizo and the team leader behind 2nd Edition. It takes a whole company to make a game like this, and boy, it just seems like it snuck up on us. And now it releases in like 6 days or something. 5 days? 6.
Almost.
6. Yeah, it's less than a week.
And we're all going to be over at Gen Con. And
Yeah.
And have you actually got to play a little bit?
Awesome. Yeah, no, I've been playing a lot lately. As a matter of fact, I've been GMing constantly, not just in Oblivion Oath every Thursday, but I just got back from LA filming Knights of Everflame. So,
which I highly recommend watching that. I think on Tuesday.
It's Tuesday night, yeah, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Pacific time, and I'm going to be in chat. So I'm going to be in Indy. I land a few hours before this airs, and I will be in chat watching it with all of you, hopefully. So it should be a lot of fun. But I've been GMing almost nonstop for months now. You know, here as we get closer to the end, it's kind of an exciting time for us to talk about being a GM.
Yeah, and one of the things I've always struggled with me personally GMing my games far into the past is usually setup. There's a lot of people get very intimidated by the setup of game mastering their own game. They might think they have to do an Olympian task of stuff, but in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, what I've heard, it was a lot easier to do so. We have a lot of tools to help out our fellow game masters. So how do you set up for a game in Pathfinder 2nd Edition?
Well, so I think the first thing to note is that at its heart, the start of that process is kind of the same, right? You're still trying to figure out what your story is, what tale you're trying to tell. We didn't fundamentally change the narrative of the game or the world, right? So if you're inventing a storyline where there's a forest filled with trolls and some charismatic troll king has come along and is now leading the trolls on a pillaging siege of the countryside, you know, that story still works in 2nd Edition. It worked in 1st, it works in 2nd. So at its heart, that initialization, the first bit, that spark of creativity, that's still the same. Nothing about that changed really at all. So we're, you know, that we didn't want the game itself as a narrative structure to change. But once we got beyond that, we recognized that the GM's job can be pretty daunting. Like, the rules for building encounters in 1st Edition were a bit of a challenge. You know, so when it came time for us to figure out how to do it in 2nd Edition, we tried a different approach. We decided that, you know, we wanted to work off a bit of a system we call the encounter budget. And what this is a system by which you basically decide how hard you want the encounter to be, and then you buy monsters using a budget formula. So, for example, let's say you want to build a moderate encounter. That would be a budget of 80 XP. So if you throw 2 monsters of the party's level at them, that is a moderate encounter. So if the party's 4th level and you want a moderate encounter, that's 2 4th level monsters. You have that 80 XP to spend. But let's say you want to throw more monsters at them. You could instead grab 2nd level monsters for your 4th level party and throw 4 of them at the group. Now, there's some great stuff about this that we didn't have in 1st Edition. One of the things that was kind of different is that in 1st Edition, you really were incentivized to include exactly the right number of monsters. And if you included the wrong number, maybe it was a level higher in challenge or a level lower in challenge. And we didn't really want the game to play that way. So, for example, yesterday in Oblivion Oath, I ran an encounter with 3 Pugwumpies and 1 more powerful gremlin. And that total encounter budget came out to 90 XP. So it wasn't 80, it wasn't 120, it was 90. Yeah. So in the end, the players will just get 90 XP. It's not like I'm cheating them out of XP. And all that is it tells me where that was in the challenge rating. It was supposed to be a little harder than moderate, nothing threatening, nothing life-threatening, but a fun, engaging encounter, which is what it turned out to be. So, you know, when it comes to building encounters, we wanted to make that job kind of simpler. So it's about knowing your party and what they're capable of facing.
So one of the things as well is, as you're going to go through your adventure and stuff, everyone loves loot. Everyone likes to get at least something from their adventure in some way, shape, or form, be it treasure, items, etc.
Yeah.
So how do we deal with giving people certain items in Pathfinder 2nd Edition throughout their adventure?
Sure. Well, yeah, right. I mean, after they finish fighting, all those monsters, they're going to want some loot because they're greedy. And as GM, I guess you should indulge them every once in a while. I mean, don't listen to me. But yeah, I think fundamentally, right. We wanted that process to be simpler as well. In first edition, you really could get bogged down with trying to spend every copper and give them interesting items. So for second, we just kind of qualified items with levels and then allowed you to just pick items of the right level to give out as part of the treasure for those encounters. And you kind of do it almost level by level. So when the party's 5th level, you have to give out X number of 5th level items, a couple 6th level items, and a handful of consumables. And you can package those in the level kind of however you want. It's not on a per encounter basis necessarily anymore. It's more about understanding that throughout this level, you want to hand out this many items. So I think we grabbed a slide for this, but I wanted to show everyone the Eye of Robes. I mean the robe of eyes. That's right. Yeah. It's a callback joke, because those are funny. Anyway, so Robe of Eyes, I wanted to show that off. I think one of the things that I'm most excited about magic items in second edition is that even the ones that are just simple items that give, boosts to your ability scores, or not ability scores, to your skill bonuses, all of those items are more exciting than they were in first edition. They don't just give a bonus now. Now they can be activated and do something else. Like one of the items is like the Bracers of Dashing, and it gives you a bonus to acrobatics check. But you can also activate it to increase your speed by 10 feet for 1 minute. Like, all of those items are designed to be more engaging, more interesting, and a better part of the game experience. It's not just about giving you a numerical bonus. Here we have the Robe of the Archmage, which is one of the most powerful items a wizard can get in the game. All of those should speak to the character and speak to their concepts. We want those to be an exciting, fulfilling part of the game, and not just something you just it's a checkbox. Oh, I got another cloak. It's 1 higher than my previous cloak, so I guess I wear that now.
Yeah.
That's kind of dull.
But at least you'll get pretty much exciting items as you go through. And from what we talked about last time with James Jacobs and stuff through the Adventure Pass, there's even some magical items that you can still get through those Adventure Pass, which are kind of exclusive.
Yeah, so that's a new feature. I wouldn't say new. It's something we're really focusing on and codifying with the new edition of Pathfinder, in that when you play an adventure, we want the things you get from that adventure to be kind of the signature of your travel. We want your character to be molded and shaped by the adventures that you go on. That doesn't mean that your vision for the character isn't an important part of that. You get to choose feats and all sorts of stuff. Feats, skills, all the various things you get as you go up in level. But we wanted your gear and some of your choices to really kind of flow from the games you're playing. So if you finish up Fall of Plaguestone, or if you finish up the first installment of Age of Ashes, you end up with some items and gear and choices that speak to your adventures, that color where your character grows and where you develop, so that if you look at a character further down the line, you can see what adventures they've played just by the choices they have, by the things they have on their character.
Would you like to tell us more about the Fall of Plaguestone?
Oh, sure. So not everybody has the time or the energy to write their own adventures.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're all way too busy. In fact, getting ready for Gen Con, we're all swamped. We publish a lot of adventures, and these are a great way for busy GMs to still run a fun and engaging game and greatly reduce their prep and their time getting ready. So Fall of Plaguestone is an adventure we haven't talked too much about in the ramp up to second edition here. Today I figured it was a good time to kind of pull back the curtain at least a little bit. Don't worry, there aren't going to be any spoilers.
Yeah, don't worry.
So if you're looking forward to playing this, I'm not going to spoil anything for you. Nothing that I'm about to say is anything that you don't learn in the first 2 minutes of the adventure. So Fall of Plaguestone is designed to be an adventure for first level characters. By its end, you should gain a few levels and be a more experienced group. And the thought behind this, the impetus was, what if we wrote the adventure that is the story about how your group got to know each other and became an adventuring group? This isn't the story of their epic quest to, rid the kingdom of evil and defeat, the demonic armies of the abyss. This is the story about how you met, how you went from being strangers to being allies and companions. And that was kind of my first goal with this adventure. I also just wanted to tell kind of a nice classic fantasy yarn, a tale that kind of allows you to explore your character, has lots of different types of play in it, from exploration to dungeons to all sorts of, kind of give you a tour of the game. There's plenty of characters to interact with and role play with. There's plenty of checks to be made to, advance the story. And there's, of course, dastardly villains and monsters standing in your way. And it all started with one idea, one little seed of an idea. A bunch of strangers in the back of a wagon traveling from point A to point B. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of it. That's where it starts. It's just travelers in the back of a wagon. And they all have their own backstories, their own reasons for existing. And
pretty much a good way to introduce everybody, have some role play opportunity in the back of the wagon.
I think people think, we meet in a tavern and a wizard gives us a quest is really cliche, and they're right. But there's other ways that the players can first meet each other, and the happenstance of all being in one wagon together is one way to do that. So you're traveling. The adventure begins with everyone in the traveling merchant caravan owned by Merchant Bort. And
is Bort like a dwarf or anything?
He is a dwarf, yeah. With a name like Bort Bargith, you're dealing with a dwarf.
What does a dwarf sound like?
No, I'm not doing more dwarf voice.
I'm sorry.
They don't all have that voice. Welcome to the back of me caravan. No, I'm not doing that today.
You already did it. It's out.
I just did it. I'm sorry. All right.
But further on, you're in a wagon going off for it. Is there anything interesting with the Fall of Plaguestone that might get people interested in it? So
there's a lot of fun things about this adventure. Like I said, I really don't want to spoil the plot, but you're heading to a town called Etrin's Folly, which is in Isger. It's kind of on the border between Isger and Andoran. Mm-hmm. It's in that region of the world. And you're about to pull into the town of Etrin's Folly, which some folk call Plaguestone. And that's just kind of the start. And I don't really want to say
we don't want to say
else.
Anymore, but we want to. But from the impressions that I've got, it's going to be a very exciting adventure. And I think these are for what level is?
It's for first level characters, mm-hmm. and by the end of it, you'll probably be around 4th. So content wise, it's the sort of thing that you probably are going to play it for. My guess would be about a dozen sessions or so. Yeah. It's about the length of an adventure path volume, but it's a fully contained story within that. It takes you all the way to the end.
At least you have a start and an end, but you can still branch up off it at the end of it.
Yeah, and where you go from that is up to you, but that's the start of it. And there's a lot of other exciting things coming out with this adventure. There's a map pack, mm-hmm. A flip mat. It's not a map pack. It's a flip mat that has some of the key encounter locations on it. So that's coming out. Day 1, that releases next Thursday. There's a sound set from Sirenscape, which I've just listened to and is fantastic and filled with nice creepy sounds and good sound effects.
I think their website's sirenscape.com.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, definitely go there if you definitely want to check it out.
And then at Gen Con, we're going to be showing off a set from Dwarven Forge of one of the locations, which is going to have a bunch of unique pieces specifically designed for this adventure. So lots of fun ways to kind of level up your play experience with Fall of Plaguestone for the GM. So really excited about that. We haven't talked about it too much, and as an adventurer, there isn't a lot I'm going to spoil, but that's what we got.
So even though we now have pretty much how do we give people stuff, how do we prepare for it? Yeah. One of the things that people are also very curious about monsters, like, can we make our own monsters? Can we convert some monsters? Stuff like that. So, for one, how do you kind of build your own monsters, and how do the monster builds work? 'Cause I think we could make our own custom monsters almost on the fly. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can. So, even when you are running published adventures, players wander off the beaten trail all the time. Now, the easiest thing to do is just grab a monster from the bestiary and move forward. That's not always going to be the case, though, right? You're not always going to have the perfect thing that you need. You might need a monster from 1st edition that there aren't rules for yet. And one of the things that we're really excited about second edition is we don't build monsters the same way anymore. We kind of start off with some base statistics for the level that we want, and then we adjust them to make the flavor of the monster. Well, what that means is, as a guideline, if you're running your game and you need a more powerful ogre, you need the ogre chieftain, and we don't have an ogre stat block that's the right level. Well, you could probably start by just grabbing like the hill giant stat block. And using its numbers to create your ogre chieftain, right? And all you're doing is reskinning, so you're pulling off abilities that don't make sense and adding ones that do. It's something that once you're experienced with the system, like I do it at the table all the time. Like I'll just grab stat blocks that I need and just turn them into the monster that I need. Now, I also helped create some of these rules, so I realized that I'm probably a bit more experienced than most on that. But I'm telling you, it's not that hard to do. And with some of the universal monster rules, you can kind of kit bash things together really simply. I think even, back when I was running the Glass Cannon guys, I added a snake to it that we didn't have stats for at that point in time. And I literally just made it up at the table. So that's one way you can do it. That's probably the easiest way, especially when you can find a monster that's similar or close to what you need it to be. I think in the short term, until we get more and more monsters out, you've got an entire bestiary full of stuff to work with, but you also can easily kit bash and make the things that you need.
So one of the next things along with monsters is basically NPCs. People don't want to have to super scrounge around, be like, oh, what's this peasant going to be? What's the stat block for a peasant? Or maybe I need something for a quick NPC, maybe a bishop and stuff like that. Basically, how easy is that to kind of implement on the fly for a game? Or do we might have any plans that can help with people that in the future?
So I think there's two approaches to that we generally encourage. The first is the same thing you do for monsters. Grab a stat block that's close, call it a town guard. If you grab the bugbear out of the bestiary, and instead of describing it as a bugbear, describe it as a kind of big, brutish human guard, you pretty much have the stats you need. The players aren't going to know the difference, and for the game's environment, it's doing kind of exactly what you need it to do. You could maybe change out his gear a little bit, and all of a sudden it's going to do exactly what you need it to do in the game. I think that's probably the easiest way to do it. I think for more important villains, that may not be the case. What you may want to do is like, this is the campaign's main villain. It's a powerful wizard who has been whispering poison into the king's ear, and it's finally time to fight him. This is a character you've been struggling against for months, if not years. That character deserves a full treatment, and you can build them as a player character, and the numbers are going to come out right where you need them to come out. That we just kind of skip having to do the math of like, how many hit dice does this guy have, and how many skill ranks does that equate to. That certainly worked for first edition, but it did force us down some really weird roads, especially when you look at like Undead and Fae, which had way too many hit dice for their level to make all of their statistics make sense. We just skip the middleman now and go to the statistics we need, adjusting them up and down. But for something that's really important and a really vital NPC, you might just want to build them like a player character. They're going to be a bit more powerful in terms of their options that they have available, but numerically they're going to be kind of what you need them to be just by building one out of the book.
Dragon Cat Games asked real quick, NPC bad guy, so I have to write up a 4th level alchemist to have a 4th level alchemist encounter?
No, you really don't. So I would say there's one other thing I should note. You're not going to find any NPC stat blocks in the bestiary. They couldn't fit. We had too many monsters that were clawing at the door to get in there. So you're going to want to really pick up the Game Mastery Guide that's going to come out this winter. That book is filled with NPC stat blocks to use as a base. So if you need that mid-level alchemist, there's something that's going to work for you in there. I would also say that if you instead just need a 4th level alchemist right now, you can probably find a 4th level monster in here to give you some base statistics to work with, and then just give him alchemical stuff and grab a feat or two from the alchemist and apply it to that character, and it's going to feel like a 4th level alchemical monster, right? Or alchemist bad guy. It's that easy to kit bash because all of the player options are feats. You can just kind of bolt them onto a monster, and all of a sudden that monster feels like what you need it to feel like. I'll give you an example. let's say we wanted an ogre druid.
Yeah.
And you were like, okay, well, it needs to be a little bit more powerful than an ogre, so I'm going to apply the elite simple template, which is in the front of the bestiary here. So now it's a little bit more powerful, but I want it to be a druid. So how do I make it a druid? Okay, well, it's you know, a 4th or 5th level monster, depending on where I want to put it now. And all I have to do is give it a handful of spells to make it feel like a druid.
Yeah.
And maybe pick like the animal or the beast order or the leaf order or the storm order, like pick what order I want for it and give it those abilities as well. And all of a sudden it has exactly what a druid has. So it plays exactly now like a druid, but also has the statistics of an ogre. And you can do that in advance and it'll take you about 15 minutes. You might even be able to do it at the table once you become familiar enough with all the rules and know where they all live. Like, I could easily run that encounter on the fly and no one would even know. But that takes a little bit to get there. But with 10, 15 minutes prep, you can have that monster ready and it could be the main villain for your entire game.
Yeah. So, kind of hopping away from monsters a little bit, and remember,
Sure.
chat, if you still want to ask more about monsters and stuff.
Oh, we're going to come back to monsters.
Yeah, we're coming back to. Don't worry, there. We still got tons more because
You aren't going to get me to.
We have that
shut up
book
about
there.
Monsters.
We have that book there for a reason. So, one of the things before we kind of get into the next section, our discussion. So, one quick question from chat, which can actually lead into it.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how Pathfinder 2nd Edition has changed being a game master for you? Can you identify a few specific mechanics that makes it easier for you as a game master to tell the stories that you have always wanted to tell?
Sure. I think a big part of this is with 2nd Edition, we really wanted to put some more authority over rules back into the game master's hands. I think in 1st Edition, a lot of things were very hard codified, and that made a lot of GMs feel like they didn't have a choice. This is the way it works. I'll give you one example. When it comes to things like skills and players wanting to roll one skill or another to try and get at a piece of information, you know, they're trying to identify a monster. You have a lot of leeway in that to be like, okay, well, I know this is a Fae, so make a nature check, and that's perfectly fine, right? Yeah, I'm going to flash back to yesterday when Katina wanted to use. She was like, "Can I use lore theater to identify this monster that we're fighting?" And I'm like, you can roll it if you want. And that's the sort of leeway that the game gives me now, because those sorts of rules are now, they're in there as rules, but the GM side has suggestions and guidelines about how you use that at the table. So one of the things is a bit of flexibility that says, yeah, if you want to roll lore theater, I'm going to let you roll that. And if you get high enough, you know, oh, you heard of a play that features mischievous little gremlins that make everyone unlucky, and they were called Pugwampies. You don't know anything else about them. You just saw them in a play once.
Yeah.
And you gain some information, maybe not the information you want, but you still gain some information. I think that level of flexibility allows the GM to kind of mold and craft the story around the players a little bit more cleanly. I also think, you know, so much of the way that the game is constructed kind of lets the GM sit back and be a narrator without every piece of rule demanding things work one way or the other. The players have a lot of strictures on what they can do and what their abilities allow them to do. But on the GM side, it's a bit wider open. We kind of play with actions and the way that those come together in more interesting ways, especially when it comes to monsters.
So basically, as a game master and stuff like that, is your job flexible? Because even though we're talking about flexibility for players and stuff, are we as game masters still able to be flexible enough? Do we have to just go 100% by the rules no matter what, or do you still have some leeway with how things turn out?
Well, I think, you know, the first rule of Pathfinder is the most important rule, and it's in the very beginning of the core rule book, and that is this game is yours.
Yes.
And you are empowered to use the rules to tell the stories you want to tell. And if the rules are standing in your way, get rid of them. And as GM, that's a really important tool in your toolbox to understand and to use, is to understand that this game is here for all of you to come together and tell a story together. And as game master, you have all these tools arrayed in front of you, and knowing when to use them and how to use them is kind of, that is the GM's art form. You know, it's as simple as just knowing how to adjudicate, like the difficulty classes for things, or knowing how to make encounters really kind of come alive with monsters and traps and hazards, and knowing when to sub them out, knowing when to remove them, understanding that controls like the advancement. Earlier we talked about encounter difficulty, right? Moderate, severe, things like that. That in and of itself is also pretty flexible, right? You can add or subtract the XP that they gain based on how hard the encounter is. And I see that we're looking at the difficulty class page right now. This is something that's really, really kind of fun. So we have these kind of simple DCs. These are used mostly for skills and are like, is this something someone who is untrained could do? Is this something someone as an expert can do? Instead of having to go to various skills and look up specific DCs that are coded, we make your job easier at the table by just saying, yep, the DCs tend to be 10, 15, 20, 30, 40. That's it. Once you have that memorized, you don't need to go look up those at all. You can just say, well, this is a hard task. A master could probably do it well, so we're going to call that a DC 30. Whereas if we say, oh, you know what, an expert could probably do that, it's only 20. I think those sorts of things give you quick, easy tools at the table where you can just keep the story going. I think, the more time you spend staring at pages in a rule book, the more the game kind of slows down. The narrative kind of grinds and people start checking their phones and stuff like that. As a game master, you want to keep things moving, and being able to have a DC that's at your fingertips is pretty easy. That said, we do offer kind of more fine level-based DCs for things like spell effects and traps, because some of those really speak to life or death, right? Especially when we're talking about you just got hit by a high-level spell effect. So that's why we give you those DCs as well. But most of the time, you're just going to use those simple DCs for skill checks and kind of average kind of gameplay moments. It's really smooth and intuitive.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I'd like to at least compliment mostly on the books, because as I've been going through them, at least playing them with like Eric Mona with the quick adventure that we did, one of the things that I really liked about the books is this: if I really need a piece of information quickly, it's right there. Yeah. For one example, you can actually go to our Instagram page and stuff like that where we put up one of the goblins. So after this, you can still see after the stream how well all the information is just right there for you. Yeah. Like say, for example, you need to grab a monster, just bam, grab it, you got it. Well, instead of flipping 500 pages.
And a big part of that is we also, we made sure that the core of the game was something easy for everyone to interact with. Right? The proficiency system is a nice, even mathematical formula. It's easy to understand. The core of the actions: I move, I stand up, I take an attack, I open a door, I think about some knowledge that I'm missing. All those things are really simple and compact. And then all of the different kind of multitude of complex options live in the individual choices. So in the case of monsters, it's the thing that monsters have. In the case of player characters, it's the feats that they took that make their character unique. So all of those kind of speak to a simple game engine with options being built in based on the choices that you make. For the GM, that's what monsters am I throwing at them? What treasure am I giving them? For the players, it's what feats did I pick? So everybody has their choices to make, and that's how you build the narrative.
One quick question from chat as we lead on to the next stuff. What's running exploration mode like? Is it simple to run a dungeon crawl or forest wandering that doesn't feel stale?
So I think there's something really interesting. We named it because we wanted to be able to build rules off of it, and it's hard to build rules for a thing if we don't have a way to talk about it and refer to it, and you don't know when it applies versus when it doesn't apply. And we realized there was a part of the game that was just like exploring the world. It really, that's most of the game. There's fighting and there's exploring the world. And so we call it exploration mode, but that makes it sound kind of clinical. And I know a lot of GMs out there are like, I don't know about, it sounds really like, there's something we have to track or something? And it's like, no, this is just the narrative game state where you're just talking to your players. You're like, okay, what do you do next?
Yeah, you're no longer in combat. This is what it's identified as.
So if the players are exploring a dungeon, and let's just say that there's only one fight and it's at the very end, but there's a whole bunch of other rooms with glyphs, and there's a treasure chest in one room, and there's a chasm they have to cross on a bridge, and all of that is just exploration. So you would just say, okay, well, you're in a 20 by 20 foot room. There is a chest in the middle with a light coming down from above, spotlighting it. It's obviously a trap. All of your adventurer's instinct tells you it's a trap. There's also 2 doors out of the room. What do you do? Right? And ultimately, they're going to pick a door, and then the rogue is going to maybe try and go to the trap when no one's looking, and maybe it's a trap, maybe it isn't. Right? But that's exploration. But it's not something that we treat as this like clinical, like step-by-step thing. It's really just there so that we have an understanding of where you're at in the game space, and when that transitions from that to combat, we know what you were doing. So this is an old trick that GMs would always use, even if they were using it subconsciously, which was ask everyone at the table what they're doing right before the fight starts.
Yeah.
They don't know the fight's about to start, but you ask everyone. You're like, okay, what are you doing? All right, that's cool. Yeah, what are you doing? Okay, that's cool. Yeah, what are you doing? Great. And then all of a sudden, the were-rats jump out of the sewer and attack. And that way, you know what the game state is right before the attack happens. Well, we just built some rules around that said if you're sneaking, this is what happens at the start of the fight. If you're looking for tracks, this is what happens at the start of the fight. That just gave us ways that we could understand how those things actually translate in a way that everybody kind of gets it.
Yeah.
So that was the point. And it works really well, but I think you have to be careful not to treat it as this like process.
So even though this part of the exploration part is still getting up to that encounter, how do we handle encounters in Pathfinder 2nd Edition? And say let's put up a scenario.
Yeah.
Real quick. Say for example, me and you are adventurers. We might have some other 2 suckers with us.
Yeah.
And we're going forward, and we basically we know there's an encounter. Maybe there's some goblins down there or some bugbears and stuff like that around a campfire, and we might be able to get the drop on them.
Sure.
How do we go through that encounter, and how would you, as a game master, kind of manage that?
Sure. So this gets down to like, how do you deal with like surprises and things like that? And it's a little different in 2nd Edition because we don't. There was always kind of a classic problem of if you got surprised or the bad guys got surprise on you, the encounter would either be way harder than it was supposed to be or way easier than it was supposed to be. If you got the drop, it was way easier. If they got the drop, it was way harder. And the game never really did a good job of accounting for that. It's not like you got extra XP because they jumped you. That was just a GM trick, right? And the GM cackled a bunch, and you all took a whole bunch of extra damage. So that doesn't mean that you can't still get the drop on somebody. It's like, oh, there's a whole bunch of goblins down there. They haven't seen us yet. We know that they haven't seen us yet. We could just back away, or the wizard could just fireball them.
Yeah.
And maybe the answer is the wizard fireballs them. And it's well within your GM right to go, yeah, they didn't hear you coming. They didn't know you were there. You blow them up, and now we'll roll initiative. I think the trickier thing is, all right, we're all going to sneak up on them, and then we're all going to jump out all simultaneously, and we're all going to stab them. I mean, that's almost impossible to time out no matter what. So having that be like, well, you're all rolling stealth for initiative. If your stealth is high enough, yeah, they didn't see you coming, right? Because you beat them in initiative rolling stealth. And if you do that, you start the combat unseen, which means you can spring out and they're flat-footed and yada, yada, yada. So there's a lot of different ways that can kind of play out or come together. It depends on what type of tale you're trying to tell, what story you're trying to put together, and how all those pieces work out. And there are kind of more strict ways that you can run that and just be like, nope, sorry, everybody has to roll initiative as normal, and the goblin spotted you. I think that depends on what type of narrative you're.
Your foot snapped a twig, etc.
It always happens.
But once we're inside that encounter, what would you try to do to kind of help other potential game masters coming into the fray now? What little tips and tricks would you kind of make or suggest to them to make the fight dynamic and interesting instead of just walk up, hit, and you win?
Yeah, I think this speaks to the way that we do actions in 2nd Edition, right? Having the 3-action economy not apply to more than just the player characters. It applies to the monsters too. Yeah. Right. So making sure to understand that your monster probably has a better thing to do with its 3rd action than just swing at a -10. Yeah. Right. Move into a position where the next monster in line gets a flank. Shift out of the position so that the players have to come to you. Raise a shield, get out a different weapon, right? There's so many different things that a creature can do in a fight that making sure you get the most out of that is going to be key. But also understanding that sometimes a monster isn't smart enough to do that, right? If you're fighting a skeleton, it probably just walks up and attacks you until it's destroyed. It's not smart, but that that decision now evokes a feeling, as opposed to it being the only option available to you, right? So the cunning, hobgoblin sergeant is he's gonna move into the flank. He's gonna help his buddies. He's gonna do that. The skeleton's just gonna walk up and attack you, and it's not gonna think about flanking. It's not gonna even realize that you're flanking it. It's just going to take the penalties and take the hits because it's not intelligent. Yeah. But that then speaks to the story. So use the actions, use the system in a way that supports your narrative, right?
Yeah. Say for example, if you need help,
yeah,
to kind of help, how do these monsters behave, and how is the best way I can play this monster? From what it's described, I think in the bestiary there's some descriptions that kind of tell you this is how this creature would possibly react to this,
correct,
or how does this creature behave, basically.
Yeah, each monster not only includes its statistics, but it also tells a little bit of a story about what the monster is and how it acts and what's its place in the world. So you can always learn more by just checking out the monster's stat block and description. You can also learn a lot just by looking at its ability scores too, right? Like, if something has a big penalty on intelligence, it's not a smart monster.
Yeah.
If it doesn't have a lot of wisdom, it's not going to be clever and use good tactics. All of those things can speak to how you play the monster at the table.
So, do we have an example that we'd like to show chat real quick?
Oh, well, yeah, no, I absolutely do. We should probably get around to the point where we're just spoiling like madmen. The game comes out in 6 days, so what do you want to know? I'll just open the book and start reading. It'll be fine.
So, what monster would you like to show them?
So, what I'd love to show off is, I am Jason Bulmahn. So let's show off the Minotaur.
So tell us about the Minotaur.
So I'm really excited for this. This is one of the monsters that I actually wrote for the game. And the Minotaur has a number of kind of fun special abilities designed to really reinforce its concept. This is one of the things I'm most excited about for monsters in 2nd edition, is that their abilities are designed to reinforce what they're good at the table and the story and narrative. So this is one of my favorite abilities. It's called Hunted Fear. The Minotaur snorts and clumps as it hunts its prey, inspiring terror. The Minotaur makes an intimidate check to demoralize all living creatures within 60 feet that can hear the Minotaur but not see it. Roll once and apply the result to all creatures. If the targets are in a maze or similarly difficult to navigate structure, the Minotaur gets a +4 circumstance bonus to this check. Creatures that become frightened as a result of this also take a -2 circumstance penalty to survival checks to avoid getting lost for 1 minute. So what this does is it allows the Minotaur to be in a maze and to be hunting you down and make creepy noises in the cavern that impact your ability to escape the Minotaur. And that's great Minotaur lore. And it speaks to its story and it speaks to its abilities, right? So, that sort of thing is something we really pushed for a lot of in Pathfinder 2nd edition. And, we tried to do that with every monster we made. All of them, we didn't want really any monsters. There are some exceptions, but we didn't really want very many monsters that were just, this is a bag of hit points and an attack roll. That monster is kind of boring. Like, everything should have special things that it can do, even if those special things are just, it just tramples you, it just overruns you, right? It's a big giant, it's a dinosaur, right? It's just going to stomp you because that's what it knows how to do.
So, 2 things I want to do real quick. If actually you want to keep that book open,
I will.
Then, so chat, I want you to pick a page between 8 and 341 for me, real quick. Right. We're going to pick a random number that you guys have said. I think we just open up the book and
I'm just gonna show off bits from the book
and some of that. But as they're doing that, so we don't have to sit there and wait and all that fun stuff. Oh God, there's a lot of numbers.
Oh my God, it's flying by so fast. I just should have just said, someone pick a random number. I can see one there. It says 274. Right, I don't even know who that was, but I'm gonna go to page 274.
So what's on page 270? Oh, I really like what that is, and they can't see.
So what page we've picked here?
There we go. So you can kind of glare there.
Let me try and make sure I'm avoiding glare. Is the page of the Rakshasa. So these are both really cool. There are 2 in here. There's the Raja Rakshasa and the Dandrasuka.
So you know, the Raja one's the lion.
The tiger one with the reversed paws. This is a very classic monster, and you know, to kind of make it feel the way that it needs to, right? Their classic weakness was against like holy piercing weapons, like a holy crossbow bolt or holy arrow would deal them tremendous damage. So they have a weakness 10 against good, which would be the holy part, and they have resistance 10 except to all physical except piercing. So if you hit them with the holy crossbow bolt, you're now going to bypass their resistance and deal 10 extra damage to them. Anything else, you're not getting the bonus damage and you do 10 damage less, which makes them a real tough customer. Here's my favorite ability on these guys. It's called, on the Raja Rakshasa, it's called Scoff at the Divine. Trigger, a creature within 30 feet casts a divine spell or uses a divine ability. Requirements, the Raja Rakshasa has an unexpended spell slot that it can use to cast a spell magic. Effect, the Raja Rakshasa expends the spell slot that could be used to cast a spell magic and attempts to counteract the spell. And then it can't use Scoff at the Divine for 1d4 rounds. So if you're a cleric trying to heal your friends, the Raja is just like, no. We're not doing that.
Can you say its name 3 times fast?
Raja Rakshasa, Raja Rakshasa, Raja Rakshasa. I think I got it. All right, let's do another one.
Someone said right here, page 111.
Page 111. Let's see what's on page 111. Just gonna flip.
We'll do like a couple more monsters. They want to switch straight over to just doing questions.
Yeah, sure.
Or one or two.
So page 1111 or 1111. It's not that big of a book. Page 111 is the start of the Red Dragon stat block. So I'm going to show off the art here. You can kind of see the red dragon. I'm trying to make sure I don't have glare. There he is. You can see him there. And I'm going to flip over to the next page to look at the stats for the red dragon. And not surprisingly, I mean, he's got a fire breath weapon. I mean, that's not a shock at all. But I should say for the ancient red dragon, it's a blast of flame that deals 20 d6 fire damage in a 60-foot cone with a DC 42 reflex save for half. So it's pretty rough. It also kept the ability we gave it from first edition, which allows it to manipulate flames. So if other people cast fire spells around it, it can manipulate those and gain control of them. Obviously, it's immune to fire and sleep, and it takes more damage from cold. I mean, so it's a dragon, right? It's a big, giant, meaty monster. That ancient red, which is a level 19 creature, its jaw attack is plus 37 for 4d10 plus 17 piercing plus 3d6 fire, which means on average it's going to do, let's say that's 22, 38 plus 10, 48 points of damage per bite.
Yep.
That's a bit rough.
So, at what level is that creature?
He's 19. He's a 19. Yeah.
You need to be ready for him.
But one of the things I also love about this, and I doubt you can read it because glare and wash out. But
here, I think I can help you out here.
The sidebar is about Dahak, the endless destruction, which is an ancient dragon god spawned by the righteous Apsu. There's lots of fun little lore bits floating around in here that are just delightful.
Actually, we're gonna close that, and I'll see if
I'll
see if my side might have a little bit better. Maybe
it's a little bit better. Yeah, no, you have less glare than I do on
there you go.
Side. There we go.
Good luck copying that.
Yeah.
So one last monster, then we'll go straight for.
Yeah, sure.
We'll go straight.
Yeah, more monsters. What do you got?
So let's see. One more, chat. I need one more page from you. Don't do that number.
Every time.
No.
I don't even know what that number is.
Let's see. People kind of want in the 200s. We'll do something in the 200s. 239. What have we got at 239?
239. Page 239 is a new monster, actually. It's one of the new monsters in the book. It's called the Mukrati.
Here,
I'm going to let you hold that up.
Yeah, let me press my button here. I think it's the bottom left one here. I'm tapping.
Yeah, it's that guy. It's the giant 3-headed centipede monster.
I'll move my fingers there so you can see it. Here you go, sir.
So the Mukrati is, the sidebar from this is from a god's nightmare. The first Mukrati are rumored to have spawned in the fevered nightmares of a sleeping demigod from a dimension beyond dreams, who perished as the first Mukratis hollowed out its unconscious mind and used its flesh to transition into the mortal realm. This legend is likely nothing more than fancy, but it certainly speaks to the deadly nature of these immense monsters. This is like a gargantuan beast. It's level 15. It has partitioned anatomy, which is whenever it would become confused, slowed, or stunned, it only takes it to a portion of its nervous system, ignoring the effect, but causing one of its 3 maws to stop working. So it has like 3 heads, and it can basically be like, no, that effect only affects my fire-breathing head, not my acid-breathing head. Because, yeah, all 3 of its heads have breath weapons. All 3 deal different types of energy damage. My favorite ability on this guy is an ability. It takes 2 actions. It's called Pull Apart. The Mukrati makes 2 strikes with 2 different maws against the same target. If both hit, the target takes an additional 2d12 plus 13 slashing damage with a basic fortitude save to reduce. So basically, its 2 heads grab you and fight over your body, trying to rip you in half. And here's the best part. If you critically fail the fortitude save, you die as it rips you in half.
Oh, no. So, that's...
I love that monster. It's delightful.
So,
he's horrible.
So I'm noticing, so one last thing before we do that, if you want to display it all nice and everything else.
We'll get that back up there.
So chat, from which of these 2 books do you like more? If you could own either of these books, which one do you like more, the nice deluxe one or the actual
oh, they're both so nice, though.
one? Yeah, they're
both
it's very nice
quality books.
It's very nice, and I don't think I need this one. To be honest with you.
I mean, I've got a pile of them, you know.
Yeah,
so I mean,
there's a few of them on your desk.
We can't even get rid of them. I don't know. They're just everywhere. I think I know which one they want.
I'm seeing deluxe. So how about this? Let's go ahead and start a giveaway real quick. And at the end of the stream, we'll pick a winner.
Yeah.
So they can get this. But that's not all, Jason.
Oh, yeah. No.
So that'll be a best
But that's not all.
That'll be the best year for
turned
that.
into salesmen.
We're also going to have the Deluxe Core Rulebook to give away. And Aaron, if you want to start the giveaway, because people are already... Okay, you already got it? Thank you, sir.
Hashtag giveaway is flying past so fast that the chat has just vanished.
Along with that, we'll also add in complimentary 2nd edition poster. Also give about 2 lanyards. You can also give one to a friend.
Yeah.
And we'll also give away a whole bunch of lovely Fumbus coins. About a good chunk of them. So when you play Pathfinder 2nd edition, you'll already have your hero points.
Now, is this one prize pack or is this
one
multiple?
thing?
Oh,
Someone gets the whole
that's
thing.
an incredible prize. You know what? I'm gonna sweeten the pot a bit. I'm gonna add a D20 from my desk.
Exactly.
One of the D20s from my
mine.
desk.
Now that reminds me, I gotta get mine back.
Oh no, not one of those. Those I only have very few of. But
Okay.
I have a at my desk here at Paizo. If you ever visit Paizo and you're given a tour, not that we give too many tours, but should you ever find yourself at Paizo, at my desk I have a big giant D20 cookie jar that's just filled with dice.
Yeah.
And whenever people stop by, I give a die from my desk. So I'm going to throw in a die from my desk. I'll throw in a D20, and I will add that to the pile.
Nice. And so along with that, we also Aaron has been also doing a really nice job of getting some of your questions queued up for us. So as the giveaway is going, so chat isn't exploding. Let's go away from some questions.
Yeah,
Jason,
sure.
and stuff
Yeah,
like
we
that.
still got some time.
So let's go ahead and go down my lovely list here. And
As long as they don't require me to spend a great deal of time reading rulebook rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's super specific questions. We might save that for sometime in the future for like specifics with Jason.
Yeah.
So playable kobolds are soon, right? Maybe
Playable kobolds.
I guess. Maybe.
I mean, people love kobolds. They're cute and adorable. Though, I mean, the ones on the bestiary here are ridiculously adorable. I mean, it would be foolhardy for us not to find a way for you to play those. But I have
Maybe
nothing to
one
announce
day.
at this time.
Is there a difference on how Pathfinder?
You should come to Gen Con.
Yeah, come to Gen Con. Is there a difference on how Pathfinder 2 players, as I keep losing your question, is there a difference how Pathfinder 2 players play compared to Pathfinder 1 in terms of size? I think his question was. Let's see. Is there a difference in how Pathfinder 2 plays for smaller groups compared to Pathfinder?
Oh, sure.
Sorry.
So, number of players. Yeah. Okay. So, when you're dealing with, we assume that there are 4 players. If you have fewer than 4 or more than 4, the game talks about how you alter the encounters to make that work. And basically, the long and the short of it is, you either take away a bit of encounter budget or add a bit of encounter budget. But either way, you still award for that center line. So if you are short a player or 2, you just take out a bit of XP to make the encounter easier, so you have less monsters to play with. If you have more than 4, you just add more XP to the budget. That is just per encounter, add some extra XP, and otherwise treat the encounter normally. So I think it's like 10 or 15, depends on the level of the encounter and the challenge, but it's like, oh, well, we have 6 players, so instead of it being an 80 XP budget, it's a 100 XP budget, which might mean 1 extra, you know, weaker monster, or maybe you divide it up differently, right? There's a lot of different ways you can make that work. So that's just kind of the simple way to do it, is just to add or take away some XP from the budget, but not from the reward.
Is Fall of Plaguestone a good entry adventure to initiate new players in the Lost Omen lore?
It touches on the world of Lost Omens quite a bit, but it's not like you need to be deeply immersed to get it. Anything that's relevant to the adventure gets kind of introduced as we go along, but it does reference current events in a way that can get you asking questions about what else is going on, what's going on in the world, why is, you know, some of the things happening that are happening. I can't say any more without giving spoilers, but it is designed to kind of touch broadly upon the world, but it's not super lore deep. Anything you need to know, you kind of find out in the adventure.
So, I don't know if we can do this one, but I'm familiar with the Starfinder alien creation rules. Will the monster creation rules be similar?
So the monster creation rules are going to be appearing in the Game Mastery Guide, and once again, that comes out in winter of this, probably early next year at this point. The book has those rules in it, and those who are familiar with the Starfinder rules will find some similarities, but we'll find some differences as well. We had quite a bit more time to bake these rules and make them into what we wanted them to be. So it's less about following a rigid formula and more about kind of like, here are the numbers. How do you want those numbers to change to be reflective of the monster? So let me give you an example. You're trying to build a monster that is an armored behemoth, right? It's like a giant, but it's armored, and you want it to be really hard to hit. Well, you can obviously just kind of increase its armor class a bit to kind of be reflective of that. So against other monsters of the same level, this one's harder to hit. Now you might find another way to balance that. Maybe it has fewer hit points. Maybe it has the same number of hit points, but it does less damage per attack, so it just becomes a harder monster to take down, but it also isn't doing quite as much to you. There's lots of different ways to balance those sorts of things. And really, we're just there to give you advice, to be like, what do you want this monster to be as an expression of its concept in the game? That's more important to us than being like, well, that was supposed to be a 7, not an 8. I'm not saying that that's not important to me as a game designer, but for you at the table at home, whether or not it's a 7 or 8 is important only insofar as that tells you how that monster exists in the world. And whether or not the number is right or not depends on the story, and not a math formula.
All right, so one quick question. What is the most fun, silly monster in your opinion?
Fun, silly monster.
If you know of it, you can go through the
no. The bestiary is filled with a lot of kind of pretty serious grim monsters, but even with some of those, we try to have a bit of fun here and there. I think the most entertaining thing that I added was I added this bit based on a playtest encounter that I did with a home group, where I gave the skeleton the ability to pull off its own head and throw it at you. And it cackles and screams as it flies through the air and lands and scares everybody, and then the head rolls across the ground and the skeleton kind of stumbles around trying to pick it up. And it's for comedic effect, I'm not going to lie, but it's kind of awesome, right? Skeletons are such an iconic monster to me that having a bit of fun with them was important for the game. But I mean, the book's filled with some monsters that are a little less serious and a little bit more silly, like gremlins and things like that, and Leshy are in here, and so you're going to get some monsters that aren't quite grimdark. They're kind of silly and kind of fun.
How many templates are in the bestiary, like lycanthrope, vampire, lich, and are they easier to apply?
So as with all of the things about monster creation, it's less about making sure the numbers are dialed in perfectly tight and more about making sure that the rules express the monster you want to make. So when it comes to something like a lich, it's like, well, you start with a base monster with its statistics, and then you add the abilities and defenses and resistances and stuff like that to make it feel like a lich. So it's less about refiguring a bunch of numbers and more about adding the right abilities to it. As far as how many there are in the book, I think you may have listed most of them. There's rules for making your own ghouls. There's rules for making your own skeletons, your own zombies, liches, vampires, lycanthropes. That's close to it. There isn't an awful lot more. It's mostly undead and a handful of others.
Is there any guidance in the rule book? Yeah, Wraith Knight.
Yeah.
So.
Grave Knight is in there, yeah.
Or is there a guidance in the rule book on how to abdicate unclear rules?
Yeah, I mean, the core rulebook includes an entire section on game mastering that talks about what to do when the rules don't quite answer your question, because it's a big game, and the moment the players get to roll dice, you're going to end up in spots where the players are going to mess up the story in the game. They're going to want to do things that are crazy, right? I have an example that's floating straight to the top of my head, but it's from an unaired episode of Knights of the Everflame, so I'm not going to say it.
But watch on Tuesday.
But it's like players want to do crazy things sometimes, and they want to describe it. They want to be cinematic. And as a GM, if that sounds cool and that sounds fun, it's your job to find a way to say yes. To be like, yeah, sure, you know what? You want to trip that guy, and then follow it up with an attack? Yeah, give me that acrobat or that athletics check, right? That's how the rule is supposed to work. That's how the rules are working as intended. But sometimes the players are going to be like, I'm going to climb up that guy's back and stab him in the neck. I don't have rules for that, right? I mean, the game says, yeah, there's grapple, and I suppose that's a type of grapple. You're grappling it, so why don't we try grapple? And if you succeed, yeah, sure, we'll give you an athletics check to try and climb up its back and maybe stab at a vulnerable spot, right? That's just you taking the rules pieces and using them in a way that makes sense to you, and using them in a way that makes sense to the story. And we give you advice on how to do that. I think the Game Mastery Guide will go into more detail because this book was already big enough. And there came a point where I was like, 640 pages. I'm already breaking people's backs. So let's find a way to make it a little bit lighter. So you'll find more of that in the Game Mastery Guide.
So how difficult would it be to add mundane, non-magical weapons that are really cool, like weapons made from master smiths to the game?
So those who played in the playtest were, we had a level of like, that's an expert quality item, that's a master quality item. We pulled that from the final because we realized it was just competing with pluses in a way that they were trying to do the same thing. That said, I still think there's room in the game for that, of being like, this is a legendary sword. It's not magical, it was just created by an amazing smith. I think there is still room in the game for those sorts of things to exist. I think you could almost just take the proficiency bonus, cut it in half and say that's what the bonus is, and find prices that make sense. I think there's an easy way to kit bash that as a GM. I think rules for that is something that we're definitely going to explore in the future. So right now we kind of wanted to avoid the confusion, because it was really confusing of like, well, am I getting expert sword or is it a +1 sword? Wait, they're both +1? How does that work? So finding a way to make that work and have it make sense was the right call, but it did leave that rules concept kind of out in the cold for now.
One last question that we have before we get starting these things off here so we can get back to work and rush to Gen Con. Do we have to wait for the Games Master Guide before we get suggestions as GMs for how to build interesting dynamic encounters with moving or reactive environments? Or
so interestingly enough, one of the things that's in the core rule book, I don't think we've talked about it too much, is hazards come in two varieties, and that's traps, right? They come in two varieties, simple and complex. The simple ones are just like, oh, it's an arrow trap that comes flying out of the wall, or it's a pit trap. The complex ones are more like encounters, where things change, the trap takes actions. Like, it in and of itself is a dynamic part of the encounter, and you have to fight against it to defeat it. Now, I have a sneaking suspicion that question was also about, well, how do you do something like, let's say there's a room and it's like a giant orrery, one of those big planets moving around and things like that, and you have people on it, it's moving around, and how do you adjudicate that? Well, I think, we do talk about how to run complex encounters, but I don't know that we could provide guidance for every random
every
idea you might have,
possible
right? I
scenario,
mean, there's too many. So what we do is we just kind of give you guidance on, how to manage the game and how to manage your table. And if you have a thing that's like, the orrery goes, at 10, 20, and 30 and 0, and every time it rotates a quarter turn and everybody's on the map and everybody moves, you can come up with your own rules for that.
Yeah.
That'll work just fine. If it's a trap or something that does damage or makes attacks, even if it's not a monster, we have rules for that. That's in the hazard stuff, so you can find that in the book.
Yeah. All right, so just kind of end it off there, everybody. Let's go ahead and end the giveaway real quick to see who gets all this awesome stuff, the nice deluxe book and everything else.
Ooh.
And all the
I don't think
stuff.
I've signed these yet.
Nope, you have not, actually.
Right.
So let's wait till we get a winner for this
Oh,
one.
that way I
so,
can personalize
Aaron, did you
it.
pick one? Let's see if we got one. Water Sleuth, you've won, buddy. Congratulations. He's now got it and everything else. Congratulations. So be sure to come over to the Gen Con and stuff like that. We might have some other stuff as well. So Jason, if you'd like to sign this awesome book, I'm also going to see if I can get other people to sign it as well for both copies and stuff like that. And Aaron, just make sure to get the name for me and just kind of paste it to me on Teamwork and all that, and I appreciate you. So you guys know on how our giveaways work, by the way. For those of you always confused on how usually we do this stuff, if you have whispers enabled on Twitch, basically you'll see after we're done here and all that fun stuff, I will be whispering you. And basically that means you'll have like a little notification at the bottom of Twitch and stuff like that. If you don't have that enabled, just go through your settings and it should be in there. And if you're more confused, there will be a little Google tutorial to kind of help you out through that. And
Congratulations.
And congratulations, man. Like the managers and the bosses were nice enough to allow me to do this and everything else. So this is the last countdown till Gen Con. We will be back, I think, on the kind of end of that week on Thursday for Oblivion Oath.
That's right. Yeah, we should be back on, that's what, the 8th?
I believe so.
Yeah.
100%.
Next Thursday is the 1st, so that'd be the 8th.
Yeah, so further on from that, and then we'll be back to normal, how we used to be, right?
That's right. That's the goal.
So with that, everybody, I'd like to thank you all so much for joining me today. Congratulations to the winner. Thank you so much, Aaron, for helping me gather questions, everything else. And Jason, thank you so much, man.
Yeah,
for
thank
being
you.
here
It's a
and talking
blast.
about it. And chat, once more, thank you all so much. Sorry we couldn't get to all your questions. There's just a whole good chunk of it and everything else. So hopefully in the future, as you come back for some more Pathfinder Fridays and maybe some Starfinder Wednesdays and everything else, once everyone gets over the crud of con and everything else, that we'll be back with it. So with that, thank you all so much, very much for joining me, and I hope you all have an excellent time. And see you guys.
at Gen Con.
See you at the streams for Gen Con.
That's right.
Thank you all so much. Have an awesome day.